Oh, these little liars. I told y'all that Jax was the ringleader. I told y'all. He sat in this interview and he was telling stories about shit that he wasn't even there to witness. So let's break down some of the stuff that I heard in this interview. Playing with the contrast in this picture to try and get a better picture of the pattern on Morgan's swimsuit from Nolan's mom's Instagram from the day after he went missing. This was the picture that she was sent.
In the digital age, a photograph is supposed to be a fingerprint of reality. It captures a single, unchangeable moment in time. But what happens when the sunlight in a photograph comes from two different directions at once? When a mother's son goes missing, the photographs she receives are supposed to be a lifeline. They are supposed to be the truth. But in the case of Nolan Wells, the photographs sent to his mother, Christine Wansley, and later provided to Officer Tatum, tell a completely different story. When independent investigators overlay the images, when they adjust the contrast, when they trace the shadows, when they look at the physical structure of the boats, the physics of the images collapse. The boat seams stop abruptly under Nolan's legs. The shadows cast by the sun come from the left for one person and straight down for another. The vertical safety rails on the Triton vanish entirely, and when you line up the rope on the hull of the boat sent to Christine's Instagram, the entire skyline in the background physically moves. Buildings do not move, islands do not relocate, horizons do not bend. Unless the photograph was tampered with, unless the image sent to a grieving mother was not a window into the truth, but a carefully constructed fabrication designed to hide what was actually on that boat. You're watching the Black Docket. We track active cases, we follow the evidence, and we do not look away when the digital breadcrumbs lead straight to a lie. Today, we are diving deeper into the Nolan Wells investigation. We are looking at the tampered photographs. We are tracking the impossible movement of Nolan's cell phone, and we are exposing the fourth boat that proves the official timeline is a fiction. If you're new here, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. Now, let's look at the tape.
I am about to wipe Evil Murr's smile clean off his face because this man is a joke. So yesterday I was playing with the contrast in this picture to try and get a better picture of the pattern on Morgan's swimsuit. I realized that half of this picture is not changing at all when I play with the shadows, which is an indicator to me of a photograph being altered. So then I started scrutinizing this picture because why would I ever have reason to doubt it before? And then that's when I noticed this boat seam underneath all of their legs. You can almost trace it all the way until you get to Nolan. Not only are these creases in different places, but there's no shadow, nothing underneath his legs here. In fact, if you look really closely, make sure your brightness is turned all the way up, you can see a seam right here that just stops. And that would connect over here. Then I saw in between this elbow here, look, there is so much fabric that's supposedly his shorts. Not to mention a very intimate hand placement. I mean, that elbow is going all the way up to them hips. And then look, in between Morgan's legs, like, why does this shadow suddenly stop? You can see a seam here and then nothing. And then look at the way Nolan is holding this can. Got one finger like over the lid, but the can looks really like wide. And then his thumb is on the other side of the lid. Like, how would you hold something like that? Now look at this half of the picture. Notice how Nolan's head is casting a shadow going to the left. Same with Eric here. Head casting shadow to the left. Which means right where I am on the screen would be the direction that the sun would be coming from. And yet his shadow is going straight down and his shadow is going straight down and to the right, implying that their light source, their sun, is coming from over here. So is this picture fake? Then I started looking at the photos that they gave to Officer Tatum. Why is Nolan a giant? He and Jax are literally almost the same build and height. And I understand that perspective's a thing, but not when they're this close to each other. Not when the camera is right here. And look, same problem with this one with the shadows. Shadow going this way, shadow going this way, shadow going this way, shadow going this way, shadow going straight up and down, shadow straight up and down, straight up and down, straight up and down, straight up and down, to the left. And this jacuzzi tub looks normal at first until you zoom in. First off, why is his elbow blending into his hat? Why is his chest an Audi? And whose fucking face is that? Because that looks like AI tried to recreate this guy. This is another picture of Nolan with them, and I'm like, why does his eyes look swollen shut? Why his neck as big as his head? But get ready, folks. I'm about ready to blow their little he wasn't on the Triton picture out of the fucking water. Because right here is Morgan's swim trunks. You can see his like beads here, his glasses, his hat. But I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on in this picture. Then I was comparing these two videos and I realized, oh wait, it's a visor. It's a visor hanging off of this. See, there's the bill and like the little like part there. But as I was comparing these two pictures, something fucking hit me. Look at black part, metal, white plastic, metal, visor. Black part, metal part, white plastic, no metal pole. Look at the steering wheel. The steering wheel has this like white flap thing that's going on here. What? No white. But look, there's the door. There's the door. What's going on here with this leg? I don't know. Now, do you guys see it? Can you see it? Vertical bars, horizontal bars, vertical, horizontal. And it's not just that the vertical bars are missing. There is no horizontal bar like right here. And not only that, y'all see how there's like this curved bar here? Where's the bar in this picture? It should be going right next to the hat, like right into it. And yet we have nothing here. And I know y'all have lots of questions and I can't pretend like I have any answers to them. Now, as a follow-up to my last video, I wanted to show you this. This is from Nolan's mom's Instagram from the day after he went missing. This was the picture that she was sent. So naturally, these two pictures should line up, right? So what I did is I made sure to line up this little like black loopy thing here. I made sure to line up this part of the boat and this like rope here. Now watch. Look at the difference here. Look at that. He's barely moving. And the entire skyline is different. You can say, oh, these are different pictures and like people just moved slightly, but the skyline wouldn't fucking change. So what were they hiding? Because it seems to me they didn't want people to see this boat or this green boat. Like, the skyline doesn't change over here. Look, it's in the same place. It's just over here. So 100% from the get-go, they were tampering with photographs. Absolutely nothing that they've given anybody can be trusted. Oh, these little liars. I told y'all that Jax was the ringleader. I told y'all. He sat in this interview and he was telling stories about shit that he wasn't even there to witness. So let's break down some of the stuff that I heard in this interview. Let's start with Warren's first phone call because y'all will remember that Warren said that he was over at Ava's house for that 4th of July party when they all started realizing that Nolan was missing, and he called Miss Christine at 11 o'clock.
One of the first things I told Miss Christine Wells in the first phone call that ever occurred with anything to do with Nolan Wells being gone, because I was the first person to call Miss Christine about anything. First phone call, anything to do with Nolan Wells was me making a phone call to Christine Wells. And one of the first things I said to her, with multiple witnesses here, pull up the phone call if you want. She said, oh, well, Nolan's location is with y'all at, where the house we were at. And I was like, well, no, he left his phone with us. I told her this.
And yesterday, the same time that this interview came out, Christine Wells said this.
360 says that he's on land, and he was like, well, no, I mean, well, we have his phone.
So both versions of the story say that Warren didn't tell her about the phone until after she confronted him with the 360. Now, Warren tells Miss Christine that he knows somebody in the Coast Guard and that he's going to call them, which is very fucking different than calling the Coast Guard, which absolutely explains why the Coast Guard came out and said at first that they had not received a call from the kids that night. The Coast Guard's initial statement said they weren't informed until 12:30. Then the Coast Guard later changed their story and said, oh wait, actually we did. And it seems to me that that first call was most likely an off the record to a friend kind of deal, which means these people freaked out and didn't call the Coast Guard until after all these people showed up at Jax's house. She would explain why in the course of this interview it went from Warren called the Coast Guard to we did. Now, when the subject turns to how the family got the phone back from these boys, you'll notice that there was a couple slip-ups.
Warren, you weren't at the house, and so you weren't there when they came to get the phone and all that. So
now remember, Warren just said that he wasn't at the house when the phone was got. And then Morgan talks about getting a phone call from one of the people in Christine Wells' group.
And how did they get the phone back?
So I got a call from a kid we went to high school with. He called me just asking me questions. He saw people posting on Snapchat, like the picture that was circulating.
Except this picture wasn't posted until July 5th. So how could this picture have been circulating on Snapchat that night? But let's continue.
And he called and he was asking questions. He was like, "Where's Nolan? When's the last time y'all seen him?" And then he was like, "So where are y'all at?" And I told him, I said, "We're at Jax's house." And then Warren got on the phone, and I don't know.
So they come to my house, right? And they kind of
Hold on, before we get there. Was it confrontational or was it just just trying to find? It was confrontational already.
Wouldn't y'all agree?
Yeah,
he was 110%. He was very confrontational.
And when did this was this on the night of the 4th or the next day?
This was the night when this was before they came and got the phone.
So this is the night of the 4th, yes.
You guys are missing a part of the story. How did you get from Ava's house to Jax's house? Because Miss Christine is watching you guys on the Life 360. So suddenly she's seeing the phone leave one location and go to another. Of course I would be upset. And now all of a sudden Warren is there when the phone stuff starts happening? He's listening to the phone call? Now I need y'all to remember that Warren also said that the phone was in his truck on the first conversation, as we have from this report. Meaning if we were to believe Warren that he was not there when everybody showed up looking for the phone at some time in between 11 and 1 a.m., so then that would mean after they heard this angry phone call, Warren gets the phone out of his vehicle and puts it in Jack's house and then leaves.
There's probably like 10, 15 people in my house I don't even know. And they're all up in our faces, going crazy, asking where Nolan is, and we don't know. And finally they get into Wyatt's face, and they're like, "Where's your boat? Where's the boat at?"
Demanding his address.
Demanding his address and stuff like that. And he finally ends up giving it to him.
We give them the phone. They have the phone at this point. Then they get the address to his house. Then they go to his house. And they're searching all over his boat, what I heard and stuff like that. Well, anyways, I don't really know much about that. But they come back to my house at around 1 o'clock in the morning. We called law enforcement. I was with Wyatt at the time after we left Jax's house that night. I was with Wyatt, and one person we were with saw that their location was headed towards Wyatt's house. And so Wyatt got on the phone with 911 and was like, "Hey, these people are on the way to my house or already at my house. My mom and my dad are there alone, and they know nothing about this." But Wyatt's mom actually, when they were looking at the boat, they were actually walking from the boat, and she came out and started talking to them.
Okay, so let me get this straight. Wyatt, Morgan, and Jax were all together. Warren was gone for some reason at this point. 10 to 15 people just barge into your house. Don't know why your grandparents weren't around. That might explain some things, huh? Guess y'all had the house all to your fucking self that weekend. But then they ask Wyatt for his address so that they can go look at the boat. Wyatt gives them the address. They start heading over there. Wyatt and Morgan get into a car and leave Jax's house. Somebody else that you were with that we aren't hearing about is tracking someone else's phone. I don't know if it was somebody who was with the group that they had access to, or if they were tracking Nolan's phone and they saw it was heading to Wyatt's house. And even though Wyatt gave them the address, and instead of calling his parents, he calls 911 and tells them, "My parents don't know anything about that's going on. Can you send police over there?" Now, mind you, it was about half an hour after being on the phone with Warren that Christine was able to actually call and report him missing. But she was having to go back and forth and go down to all these different agencies because nobody would fucking help her. And frankly, I want to know why all of this confrontation was left out of the fucking report. Like, if this family had to be removed from 2 different properties by the police, why is there no record of that? And in fact, it wasn't until after these confrontations that MDMR and Ocean Springs Police apparently had their little conversations about who was going to be taking over the case. Because remember, the Jackson County Sheriff Lieutenant told them that deputies had spoken with several friends that had traveled to the island on the vessel with Nolan, and that when they were left, he was in the company of an unknown female. So now, even though Warren had supposedly called the Coast Guard, all these family members are telling the police that the kid is missing. These are the people that last saw them. They're all like, we last saw him on the island. Still, the deputies said that they did not have reason to believe that there was any water-related exigencies or emergencies. Don't worry, y'all. I've got a lot fucking more to say about this stuff, so come back for part 2. I'm gonna be immediately recording it because Warren fucked up pretty badly in this interview, and I'll show you why. Where we had left off, Warren had already called Miss Christine, and then they somehow ended up at Jax's grandparents' house. That's where they all stayed that weekend, and so that's why Nolan's keys were over there. They had to have been at the grandparents' house, who mysteriously never showed up during any of these confrontations. Somehow the phone had gone from the party that they were all at to Jax's place, and then Warren left after a phone call to Morgan. According to them, 10 to 15 people showed up and just walked into Jax's house and demanded the phone. Wyatt gave the address in which the boat was at. They all start migrating over there. Then Morgan and Wyatt and another friend are tracking their 360s and seeing that they're going over to Wyatt's house. Then they call 911 to tell them that the police are on the way to his house. Then they're searching the boat, and then they come back to Jax's house around 1 o'clock in the morning, according to him. Mind you, that's when they explain to the police about their friend being missing. And so then the report says at 1:38 in the morning, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office say that they spoke to several of the friends that were on the vessel with Nolan, saying that he was in the company of an unknown female. But Morgan, Jax, and Warren all claimed that they did not travel to the island on the same boat as Nolan. So who did they talk to? Because it sounds to me like they had told the police that they were on the same boat as him. Keeping in mind that this is what Warren told Miss Christine.
Named Katie. And so then it turned into, Katie is also missing. No one can find her. And the explanation of no one knows this Katie, like we've never met her.
And Triton said this.
I was talking on my other buddy's phone, talking to Warren. He was dialing Coast Guard because he hung up the phone and was like, hey, this is them, bye, and hung up the phone. And that was the last time I talked to him.
Mind you, Triton is friends with Katie. They are mutuals. I have confirmed this. So now that we've got that timeline fucking straight, let's back up to something that Warren said during this interview.
If you're motivated enough to do it, yeah. Like, I made a phone call to my mom, and I had to call her like 8 times before she picked up because either her service was bad because she was on the back side of the aisle on the south side, or my service was bad, and it was just hard to get through.
Do y'all see that? Let me play it again slower for you.
Either her service was bad because she was on the back side of the aisle on the south side, or my service was bad, and it was just hard to get through.
Oh no. Not only did Warren confirm that his mom was on the south side of the island, but Warren himself said that if you're motivated enough, you can call somebody. I tried calling my mom 8 times. Yet this is what he said last time.
A little off the island, you have cell coverage, and even on the island, like I called my mom when we were on the island, it was fine.
So which is it? Did you call your mom with ease, or did you try to call her 8 times because you were motivated to get in touch with her? But Warren wasn't the only one to slip up, because listen.
And he's on the phone with Cito, and he's trying to get them on the phone. And as he stated in the moment, he's like, Cito's just asking all these dumb questions. I can't figure out what's going on. And so finally he hangs up. And after the trim to the motor started to work again. So they manually trim it down by the buttons on the motor, trimmed it down, and some electronics started to come back on. And they got the boat to crank over, and they're like, all right, untie us.
So first off, Jax just proved that the boys put the phone on mute during the call with Cito. Because I've listened to the entire 8-minute call, and at no point did they ever say anything about them asking all these stupid questions. Then he said after they hung up on the Cito, that's when it started working again, and they said, okay, untie us, implying that it had been tied up to the other boat the entire time. But we see in this video that they are hauling the line back in right here as he's on the phone. See, you can see right here where the line is being pulled in from across the way where the boat is stationed. Meaning he had already hung up with Cito at that point, and he had to have been on the phone with someone else. And what we see here is, once again, we have an interview where they go into so much detail about stuff that doesn't fucking matter.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and first off explain a boat.
We fucking get how a bilge pump works. We get it by now. Stop fucking talking about the bilge pump. what we actually want to hear about is the multiple stops that were made before ending up back at the grandparents' house before they even took the boat to the boat dock. We want you guys to explain how the sea tow was canceled by the grandfather on the captain's private line before you guys had even hung up with sea tow. That's why nobody believes a fucking word that you are saying. Because I showed y'all yesterday how AI had clearly doctored these photos. If you missed it, look, silver pole. Look, no silver pole. It's actually white. And if you look at this picture in the grandparents' driveway of the Triton, you will see that the little handrails are not leaning over. You will see that the rails are going straight up and down and not leaning, which is why I also suspect that the identity of whoever this is was intentionally covered up. Because first off, who wears this weird swimsuit thing? This is somebody who, if they were with them, would have stood out in a crowd. But this woman who's in a red striped swimsuit with a white baseball cap shows up in a lot of different pictures, just oh so obscured. Here she is again, handing out beers on Bart's boat. So I personally suspect that whoever that was in fact on the Triton, and they used AI to change her clothing and to obscure her identity. Because I think this was either Warren's mother or Wyatt's stepmother, which would explain the older female voice people have said they've heard on the sea tow. Because otherwise, why would he need to call his mother 8 times? Unless, according to his own words,
If you're motivated enough to do it, yeah.
because remember, there is a 4th boat out there. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Holy fuck, I just accidentally stumbled onto something that literally is concrete proof. Oh my God, next video coming, oh my God!
Take a breath. What you just watched was a masterclass in how a narrative is built, how it is defended, and how it ultimately fractures under the weight of its own contradiction. While the attorneys were busy issuing televised ultimatums, quoting mob movies, and laughing at the threat of a courtroom, independent investigators were doing something far more dangerous to the official story. They were looking at the pixels. They were tracing the shadows. They were mapping the cell phone data. They were counting the safety rails on a 22-foot Triton. And when you strip away the PR strategy, the race pivots, and the 0% certainties, you are left with a digital crime scene that tells a completely different story than the one delivered on the Officer Tatum show. Let's walk through the 4 critical anomalies the investigator uncovered, step by step, using only the pixels, the timestamps, and the public record. Because when you connect the dots, the picture doesn't just blur, it shatters. The first anomaly is the most visually devastating because it strikes at the very heart of the trust between the friends and the public. When the photos of the group on the Triton were released, they were supposed to serve as proof that Nolan was there, proof that he was safe, proof that the group was together before the boat allegedly began to sink. But as the investigator demonstrated, when you adjust the contrast on that photograph, the physical reality of the image begins to dissolve. Look at the boat seam running underneath the legs of the young men. You can trace it perfectly from one end of the hull to the other until you reach Nolan. Underneath Nolan, the seam stops. The creases in the fiberglass change. The shadow beneath his legs vanishes entirely. Then look at the hand placement. The investigator noted the intimate, physically awkward way Nolan is holding the can. One finger over the lid, the thumb on the other side, the can stretched impossibly wide. It is the kind of distortion you see when an image is stretched or composite edited in Photoshop. But the most damning evidence is the sunlight. In the left half of the photograph, Nolan's head casts a shadow to the left. Eric's head casts a shadow to the left. This means the sun is coming from the right side of the frame. But in the right half of the photograph, the shadows cast by the other young men go straight down, or down, and to the right. This implies the sun is coming from the left side of the frame. Unless the photograph was taken on a planet with 2 suns, this is a physical impossibility. The light sources do not match. The shadows do not align. The photograph is not a single moment captured in time. It is a composite. It is 2 different images stitched together to create a reality that never existed. And if the photograph of Nolan on the boat is fabricated, we have to ask, what else was fabricated? Which brings us to the second anomaly, because the tampering didn't stop with the shadows. It extended to the very structure of the boat itself. When the friends provided photographs to Officer Tatum, they were supposed to be offering transparency. They were supposed to be showing the authorities exactly what the Triton looked like on the 4th of July. But when the investigator compared the photos from the water to the photos of the Triton sitting in the grandparents' driveway, the boat itself began to change. In the driveway photo, the Triton has distinct vertical and horizontal safety rails. They are rigid, they are metallic, they are bolted into the fiberglass. But in the photo taken on the water, the photo supposedly showing the group hanging out on the boat, those rails are gone. The vertical bars are missing, the horizontal bars are missing. The curved bar that should be running right next to the hat is completely absent. Boats do not shed their safety rails between the driveway and the Gulf of Mexico. Metal does not evaporate in the salt air. If the rails are missing in the water photo, it means the water photo was altered. It means the image was manipulated to remove something or someone that was standing behind those rails. And then there are the faces. When the investigator zoomed in on the photo of the young man in the jacuzzi tub, the image dissolved into something deeply unsettling. The elbow blended seamlessly into the hat. The chest protruded in a way that defied human anatomy. And the face looked like an artificial intelligence algorithm had tried to recreate a human being and failed. The eyes were swollen shut. The neck was as wide as the head. The features were smoothed over, blurred, and distorted. This is not a camera lens distortion. This is not a bad angle. This is the hallmark of AI generation, or heavy-handed digital manipulation. When you use software to alter a photograph, the algorithm struggles to maintain the integrity of the background and the edges of the subjects. It blurs the lines. It creates artifacts. It generates faces that look like they belong in a nightmare. Why would anyone use AI to alter a photograph of a group of friends on a boat? The answer is simple. You alter the photograph when the original photograph shows something you cannot explain. You alter the photograph when the original image contains a person who shouldn't be there, or a boat that shouldn't be in the frame. Which brings us to the third anomaly, because when you alter the foreground, you often forget to check the background. And the background of this case is hiding a secret that destroys the entire official timeline. On the day after Nolan went missing, Christine Wansley was desperate for information. She was calling, texting, tracking his Life 360, and during that frantic window, she was sent a photograph, a picture of the boat. A picture that was supposed to show her where her son had been. She posted that photograph to her Instagram. It was a raw, unfiltered image sent directly from the friends. But when the investigator took that photograph and overlaid it with the other images of the Triton, they found the smoking gun. They lined up the rope on the gunnel. They lined up the black loop on the hull. They made sure the foreground was perfectly aligned. And when they did, the background betrayed the foreground. The boat didn't move. The rope didn't move. But the skyline behind the vessel completely shifted. The buildings moved. The trees relocated, the horizon bent. As the investigator said, the skyline wouldn't fucking change. You can argue that people moved slightly between photos. You can argue that the camera angle shifted. But you cannot argue with the skyline. The coast of Ocean Springs is fixed. The barrier islands are stationary. The horizon is a constant. If the skyline shifts between two photographs of the same boat, it means one of the photographs was digitally altered. It means the background was swapped. It means the image sent to Christine Wansley was not a window into the truth, but a carefully constructed fabrication. And why would they swap the background? The investigator asked the question that hangs over the entire case. What were they hiding? Because it seems to me they didn't want people to see this boat, or this green boat. If the original photograph showed a fourth boat, a boat that wasn't part of the official narrative, they would have to remove it. If the original photograph showed a person on the shoreline who shouldn't have been there, they would have to blur them out. When you tamper with a photograph sent to a grieving mother, you are no longer just managing a PR crisis. You are actively obstructing the truth. You are manufacturing a reality. And once you establish that the photographs are fabricated, every other piece of evidence they have offered must be viewed through the lens of that deception. Which brings us to the fourth anomaly. Because the tampering wasn't limited to the photographs, it extended to the timeline, it extended to the cell phones, it extended to the very calls made to the Coast Guard. Chapter 4: The Timeline Contradictions and the Fourth Boat. When Warren Hudson sat down for the interview, he was trying to control the narrative. He was trying to establish himself as the responsible friend, the one who made the calls, the one who tried to help. But as the investigator dissected his testimony, the timeline began to fracture. Warren claimed he was the first person to call Christine Wansley. He claimed he told her Nolan had left his phone with them, but Christine's account tells a different story. She said Life 360 showed Nolan's phone was on land, and when she confronted Warren, he finally admitted they had the phone. Both versions of the story agree on one thing. Warren didn't tell her about the phone until after she confronted him with the GPS data. Then came the Coast Guard call. Warren claimed he knew somebody in the Coast Guard and that he was going to call them, but as the investigator pointed out, knowing somebody in the Coast Guard is very different from calling the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard's initial statement said they weren't informed until 12:30 a.m. Then they changed their story and said they did receive a call earlier. The investigator deduced that the first call was likely an off-the-record call to a friend, which means the boys freaked out and didn't officially call the Coast Guard until after the family showed up at Jax's house. And then came the movement of the phone. Warren claimed he was at Ava's house when the phone calls started, but Morgan's testimony revealed that 10 to 15 people barged into Jax's grandparents' house demanding the phone. Wyatt gave them the address to the boat. The family started heading over there. Then, Morgan and Wyatt got into a car and left Jax's house. Somebody else was tracking the Life 360 and saw the phone heading toward Wyatt's house. Instead of calling his parents, Wyatt called 911 and told them the police were on the way to his house. Why would Wyatt call 911 to report his own family's location? Why would the phone move from Ava's house to Jax's house and then toward Wyatt's house? The investigator laid out the sequence. Warren gets the phone out of his vehicle, puts it in Jax's house, and leaves. The family tracks the phone to Wyatt's house. Wyatt calls 911. The family searches the boat. They come back to Jax's house at 1 a.m. This is not the behavior of a group of friends trying to find a missing boy. This is the behavior of a group of people trying to control the physical evidence. They were moving the phone. They were moving the keys. They were directing the family to the boat while they sanitized the house. And then, in the middle of the interview, Warren made a slip-up that changes everything. He was talking about trying to call his mom. He said either her service was bad because she was on the backside of the island on the south side, or my service was bad. Wait, Warren just confirmed that his mom was on the south side of Horn Island. But the official narrative says the Triton left at 4:30 p.m. If Warren's mom was on the south side of the island, she wasn't on the Triton. She was on a different boat. And earlier in the interview, Warren said, if you're motivated enough to do it, yeah, like I made a phone call to my mom and I had to call her like 8 times. But in his previous interview, he claimed cell service was fine on the island. Even on the island, like I called my mom when we were on the island, you know it was fine. So which is it? Did he call his mom with ease, or did he try to call her 8 times because he was motivated to get in touch with her? The contradiction is staggering, but the implication is even more devastating. If Warren's mom was on the south side of the island, and she was calling him, and he was trying to call her 8 times, there was a 4th boat out there. 1, 2, 3, and 4. The official narrative involves the Triton, Katie's boat, and Bart's boat. But Warren just accidentally confirmed the existence of a fourth vessel, a vessel that was on the south side of the island, a vessel that his mother was on, a vessel that was communicating with the Triton while the boat was allegedly sinking. And if there was a fourth boat, who was on it? Was it the woman in the red striped swimsuit with the white baseball cap? The woman the investigator suspects was either Warren's mother or Wyatt's stepmother? Was it the older female voice people heard on the CTO call? The investigator connected the dots, because otherwise, why would he need to call his mother 8 times unless there is a fourth boat out there? This is the concrete proof. This is the thread that unravels the entire sweater. If there was a fourth boat, the timeline is a lie. The geography is a lie. The photographs are a lie. The Coast Guard call is a lie. Attorneys can spin. Publicists can pivot. Young men can freeze on camera and look to their handlers for permission to breathe. But pixels do not lie. A skyline that shifts between 2 photographs is a fact. A boat seam that stops under a missing boy's legs is a fact. A safety rail that vanishes between the driveway and the water is a fact. A fourth boat on the south side of the island is a fact. The Jackson County Sheriff's Office may be satisfied with a 2-word finding. The state of Mississippi may be content to seal an autopsy and call it procedure. But the independent investigators who adjusted the contrast, who traced the shadows, who mapped the Life 360 data, they have ensured that the digital crime scene remains open. Nolan Wells was 18 years old. He cooked salmon for his mother. He didn't drive, so his friends picked him up. And on the 4th of July, he got on a boat with a fleet of vessels that swapped passengers, hid keys, scrubbed videos, and tampered with photographs. The lawyers can threaten the internet all they want. They can quote their movies and laugh at the cameras, but eventually, the grand jury will convene. The subpoenas will fly, the hard drives will be seized, the raw image files will be subpoenaed, and when the exposure is finally pumped up on the whole truth, there will be nowhere left to hide. We will be here when the digital forensics are entered into evidence. We will be here when the security footage is finally played. Most channels will not be. After watching the breakdown, which details stood out to you the most? The shifting skyline, the missing safety rails, or the accidental confirmation of the fourth boat? Drop your theory below. If you want coverage that respects the evidence and honors the families, subscribe to the Black Docket and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. And before you click away, do me a favor, drop a comment below and tell us exactly where you are watching from today. We're building a global watch room here, and I want to see how far this community reaches. Drop your city, state, or country below. Until next time, stay safe, and we'll keep watching.